What's going on, guys? Welcome to another edition of Analytically Correct. I'm here with Jeff, a new contributor, Chase, one of my good friends from high school and college, and then obviously Stretch, as always. We're going to get into a little bit of fantasy football today. Most people's drafts, I think, are probably coming up this weekend, if not pretty soon after that. So we're just going to talk pretty generally about different tiers, different players, strategies, that kind of thing. Pretty topical based on everything going on right now. So I think just what I wanted to start with, and just to kick it off, let's say most of these things are going to be based on 10-team leagues. The league I'm in with Jeff is a crazy league. It's 16 teams and there's keepers. So we're not going to go off of that sense because almost people are 10-team leagues. So I would just kick the question to Jeff and then Chase, whoever wants to jump in. If you had the first pick, obviously I think everyone would agree it's Christian McCaffrey. Is there any argument against that? Is there anyone else you guys would take? And then cases like for or against him, obviously. He was last year.
No, I mean, it's after last year, it's pretty clearly McCaffrey, but I would get somebody who would still maybe try Saquon. Like, he's the only other person that to me is in the argument. But McCaffrey for sure in probably 98% of the leagues is probably going to be the first pick.
Yeah, definitely McCaffrey, especially if it's a PPR league.
Yeah,
you get over 1,000 reception yards a year, so it's pretty much a lock.
So when you brought up that PPR thing, I guess just if we're going generally, and I know how I feel about it, and people are usually pretty passionate on one side or the other. How do you guys feel about PPR versus non-PPR before we get into everything?
I like it. Makes it more exciting.
Not a fan. But
no, I'm not either.
I am not a fan in the sense that I think it just kind of skews the traditional stats and it gives people points, really hollow points for just catching the ball. And we've seen it before where, people have gotten 5 receptions and 30 yards and they get double-digit points. So, I just think it skews things. I'm used to playing in standard leagues. It's kind of what I prefer, but I know most leagues play some form of PPR, either half point or full point PPR. I just don't like it, but I know how popular it is.
So I would be a fan of PPR if there was a stipulation where it counts for an extra point per reception, but it has to be at least like a 10-yard catch, because you can get a catch for -2 yards and you still get positive points.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just I don't see the need for it. And when you bring up PPR, it could be like, okay, what about points per carry? Like, what's the difference of a catch and a carry if it's less than 10 yards? But so we got up to Christian McCaffrey being number one. I have kind of tiers pulled up here, and let me see if you guys disagree or agree with any of these. I guess first, as a general thing, what kind of strategies do you guys use when you draft? Are you people who wait on quarterbacks? Do you want to go like running back, or best available? What is your strategy, Jeff? It's tough because we're talking about 10-team leagues, but obviously.
I mean, 10-team. No, I mean, I think if you've been doing this, you understand even in a 10-team or 12-team that there is a certain strategy. In a 10 or 12, for sure, you're waiting on quarterback. There's no need to, and especially this year, and especially really the past several years, it doesn't really make any sense to draft a quarterback earlier than round. Obviously you have some of the elite guys, but in general, I have traditionally waited on a quarterback even in a large 16-team league format. But I was fortunate in that I drafted Patrick Mahomes as a rookie in the 11th round. So, I got to keep him for a couple years, and I have, and that's worked out well for me. But in general, I think you wait on the quarterback. There's been theories on like the 0 RB thought process. I think at the end of the day, there's some breaking points where you have to take best available. In general, though, running backs are typically what wins a lot of leagues, and so that's why they're typically ranked the highest. But there's a breaking point where you have to decide between Chris Carson and Julio Jones or something like that.
So I want to get back to some of those major draft strategies and themes. But for Chase, what would you say as far as most of your leagues? What kind of strategy do you use?
Well, for me, it all depends on what pick you have. If you have a top 5, I'll always take a running back. But if I have 6 through 12, I'll take the best receiver and then pair it with the quarterback. So I'll have the quarterback receiver combo.
Okay, so when I'm with Jeff on the weight on the quarterback thing, but what I'm kind of interested more in is when you say weight on a quarterback, what kind of quarterback is good enough? Like you're gonna wait, but you don't want to wind up with
your assumption is the rest of your team is good enough, and that your quarterback, depending on your scoring format, is going to get you 15 to 20, right? And that's generally the way I've looked at it. I tried to get, if I'm waiting on a quarterback, I'm trying to get guys that are maybe upcoming or teams throw the ball a lot. I ended up with Phillip Rivers a lot of years, several years back. He seemed to always be there in those later tiers. But Phillip Rivers, he was never going to crush it for you. But most of the time he was a 15 to 20 point guy. And if you hit on the majority of the rest of your team, then that's probably good enough to keep you competitive in most leagues.
Well, not anymore. Not when Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson are really 30 plus every week.
Yeah, again, it depends on the scoring format. If you're in certain leagues and certain scoring formats, yeah, that's definitely not going to be the case. However, I mean, if you look back even to what I'm referring to, I mean, Aaron Rodgers and Drew Brees and those guys were putting up 25 to 30 points fairly regularly too.
So if we're talking about 10-team leagues, for what I have pulled up here, basically is Aaron Rodgers is in tier 3 at 13. So I mean, if you're waiting on a quarterback in a 10 league, the 10th rated quarterback is Drew Brees, and you have Tom Brady, Matthew Stafford, Aaron Rodgers. So you can wait on it. But if Chase is going to say, I would rather have a really good quarterback, what is the earliest you would draft Patrick Mahomes? Where would you feel comfortable? I have to take him at this point, Chase.
Earliest, probably the end of the second round, beginning of the third round.
End of the second round. So if you had the first overall pick and you take Christian McCaffrey, you would be happy with your second pick at the end of the second round being Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, because then I would just do Patrick Mahomes, Tyreek Hill, and Christian McCaffrey.
Well, Tyreek, I mean, I think is going third or fourth round if we're talking 10-team leagues.
Well, I usually do a 12-team league, so he's usually there in the third round.
You've done mock drafts where he's there in the third round?
Yeah, he's the 5th or 6th receiver.
Okay. I mean, I've seen Tyreek Hill go pretty high. But for tier 1, where they have the running backs is Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley, Ezekiel Elliott, Derrick Henry, Alvin Kamara. And I mean, would you guys be surprised if anybody but Christian McCaffrey was the number 1 fantasy running back this year?
Yeah, it's pretty unanimous, right? I don't think anyone would take
not the number 1 picked, but the number 1 to finish with points.
No, I think Saquon can absolutely finish first, and I think Zeke could. Well, I think Saquon has the best chance because the Cowboys' offense is going to have a lot of mouths to feed, and so the Giants are getting there. But I clearly McCaffrey, barring injury, and we don't know what that new offense looks like, so it seems like it should favor him, but we don't know if they're going to utilize him exactly the same way to the volume that he was last year.
Who was the number 1 pick last year at running back?
Saquon. I think it was Saquon, yeah. I mean, I think the only thing holding Saquon back, honestly, is that he's on the Giants. That's pretty much the only knock against him.
He finished out the year pretty freakishly. I think his last 4 or 5 games is when he came back from injury. He was
Well, so you guys both watch a lot of college football. If you think just who's the better running back, not based on fantasy, but in reality, like Saquon Barkley is a better running back than Christian McCaffrey. Like if
I
Saquon,
don't know. I mean, they're both ridiculously explosive. They both catch the ball really well. Saquon is more capable of running between the tackles a little bit more than Christian McCaffrey but they use McCaffrey a lot on the goal line too. So I McCaffrey traditionally fit like, he's just he's a freakish athlete. So they're really dynamic. And I think you're flipping a coin between the two, to be honest with you.
right? I'm just saying if you put Saquon Barkley in the same offense as Christian McCaffrey, he can do the same things.
Yeah.
So if we look at some of these quarterbacks in Tier 1, do you guys disagree with these? Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Dak Prescott. Is there any way that Lamar Jackson finishes as the number 1 quarterback ahead of Patrick Mahomes? Is there any chance that Dak Prescott finishes as the number 1 quarterback?
Yes.
I like Kyler Murray over Dak Prescott.
You would, if both of them were available, you would take Kyler instead?
Yeah, I would just pass on Dak and then take Kyler fourth. I wouldn't risk Dak. Especially with DeAndre Hopkins now, they're going to have an amazing offense.
But I don't think Dak Prescott is that much of a risk. Like, he's a pretty high finishing quarterback as far as points go every single year. Is there any, for Jeff, is there any reason why, other than injury, why Dalvin Cook shouldn't be in Tier 1? Because to me,
that's it. It's injury. And the only reason he's not there this year, he's literally right outside that, is because the end of the year for him, the last, I think, 4 or 5 games last year were kind of mediocre after being first or second running back, basically, statistically, for most of the year. He finished kind of on the downside of things. Dalvin, it's about injuries. And if anybody sits and says they're drafting and they guarantee 15 games from Dalvin Cook, they're going to take him, even ahead of, maybe even Derrick Henry. So it's injuries for Dalvin.
So you brought up Derrick Henry, and one of the things, I would love to have Derrick Henry on my team this year if I was drafting in fantasy, but I think the only concern is regression to the mean. Like, is he going to have as good of a season as he had last year with that physical running style? Injuries happen, especially at running back. I mean, how are you guys feeling about Derrick Henry going into this season overall?
I think he's a first-round pick.
Well, I mean, obviously he's a first-round pick. He's going to be a top 5 pick. I'm just saying.
Definitely not top 5.
Not top 5?
No, are you kidding me? You got Zeke, Kamara, McCaffrey, Dalvin Cook, Saquon, yeah.
And then he's 6. I think Dalvin and Saquon, or not Dalvin and Henry are on that borderline 1-2 fringe where there are some of the younger backs. It just depends how you feel, like if Miles Sanders is going to take that next step, or if Aaron Jones is going to, they're going to actually give him the right amount of carries in Green Bay. And then you obviously have like Hilaire, which everybody's,
Yeah, I like Hilaire, the rookie from LSU.
I wanted to get into Hilaire, so I'm glad you guys brought him up. He's in Tier 2 on the thing I'm looking at, and it's Draft Wizard Fantasy Pros, whatever, something like that. But it's a pretty high-rated rookie, and obviously, I mean, what are the benefits and the negatives of being in that offense? I mean, the benefits obviously would be
there's no negatives.
The highest scoring offense.
No, there's no negatives.
Well, one negative I would bring up was, is there too many mouths to feed? Like he just said, or somebody just mentioned that there's too many mouths to feed on Dallas.
No, I mean, I think if you have to look at the amount of possessions and how many snaps that Kansas City gets relative to other teams, they're very explosive. But because of that, there's going to be more scoring opportunities. So, I mean, if you go back to even just 2 years ago, prior to Kareem Hunt getting injured or suspended, he was first or second running back statistically, fantasy-wise, in that offense. That was, literally putting up already historic numbers. He was a part of that equation. What have they added? Okay, McCole Hardman. All right, yeah, they have some maybe one or two other pieces, but it's essentially the same offense. You just replaced Hilaire with Kareem Hunt is what you did. So I don't see any downside to it.
Well, I would say that there was a lot of talk last year going in about Damian Williams, and if he's the number one running back on that team, he didn't do all that great last year based on where he was drafted.
He's not even going to play this year because of coronavirus. He opted out.
Well, my point is, you're talking about Edwards-Hilaire, and my point against him would be what Damian Williams did last year in fantasy.
Right, he's clearly better than Damian Williams. Damian Williams was basically nothing. He finished out the year for Kareem Hunt when he got suspended and had a pretty solid end to the season. That's the only reason Damian Williams was even and to that point, the reason he was even being considered fairly high in fantasy last year was because he was in fact the starter for the Kansas City Chiefs. That tells you everything. Damian Williams was nobody before that. Nobody cared about Damian Williams. But then you're the starter on the Kansas City Chiefs in an Andy Reid offense. Yeah, it matters.
He reminds me of Alvin Kamara, of what Alvin Kamara did as a rookie 2 years ago. He was like a top 5 running back, wasn't he?
I think it was more than 2 years ago that Kamara was a rookie. But so off of that point, why do you guys think Kamara is going so low? I mean, they're playing like a tier 2 type of scenario. You don't really have that much injury here, and guys, I mean, one of the highest scoring offenses in the league. Why is Kamara not talked about as one of the top 5 picks?
I don't know. I think he is.
This is where somebody else talks.
I would take him top 5. If I had the 5th pick, I would definitely take Kamara over Derrick Henry.
You would take Kamara over Henry?
Yes.
Yeah, especially in a PPR because he gets a lot of catches also.
Yeah.
Okay. So you mentioned earlier, Jeff, the zero running back strategy, which I'll just give a quick talking point to. But for the fact, no, you guys don't, I mean, just quickly, the zero running back strategy is you don't take running backs in the first 2 or 3 or 4 rounds or whatever, because the theory is that they get injured more than any other position. You can find value later on. I don't know anybody who does this.
It was a theory for a little bit. It can be something where if you're in a 12 or 14, it makes no sense in a 10 whatsoever.
Yeah, I've never heard that theory.
No, it was a trend in fantasy football really for about 3 or 4 years. And the theory was that the NFL was de-emphasizing running backs, so fantasy football started feeling that way too. Some people, and that at the end of the first round, where the real value was in the wide receivers, and you can make an argument for that. So it meant you having to hit on an Alvin Kamara his rookie year, or a Kareem Hunt his rookie year, or this year, a Jonathan Taylor in a 12-team league probably is in the 5th round or something like that, right? That's what that theory is. It's not zero running back. It is I'm taking Mike, Michael Thomas. I'm taking Michael Thomas, then Tyreek Hill with my second, and then in the 4th round I'm gonna go with Jonathan Taylor. In the 5th round I'm going with Cam Akers or something like that. That's the theory. It's not zero running back at all.
I think no quarterback is a better way to go than no running back.
Yeah, for sure.
I think most people kind of subscribe to the wait on quarterback thing now. It just becomes, at what point would you rather have Patrick Mahomes or like the 17th best running back or receiver?
I think the smartest thing to do as people start to play fantasy is not focus necessarily on a specific player, but a tier. Create a tier for yourself. And in this tier, I like these players. In this tier, I like these players, and stick to those tiers. And it means even picking a wide receiver, even if you need a running back at that spot. because that's where the better player is. That's what I subscribe to for people who are trying to figure their way through especially this season.
Who would you take at the number 9 pick? That's what
In
pick I have.
you said you're in a 12-team league.
Yeah, 9
And
out of 12 team.
no keepers, and you guys are doing full point PPR.
No, half point PPR.
Half point PPR. I think.
With Michael Thomas being here?
Maybe Clyde Edwards-Helaire? Would he be there?
Helaire, I don't think. I think in the next week, what you're going to see is ADPs go up, and Hilaire's going to be a top 5 pick by the end of this week.
He's going to be. I'll tell you this right now. He's going to be so overdrafted.
Then who would fall if he's top 5? Who could fall to number 9?
You're. I mean, who do you like better, Drake or Miles Sanders?
Shit.
I don't like either one of them.
Tough call.
No, okay, but here's the thing. They're going to catch passes, both of them. They're very efficient. They're in pretty decent offenses, right? So that's a preference thing. But they both have some warts and some question marks. But like in a half point PPR, they're a better option than Aaron Jones.
Yeah, at that point, I'd probably just take the best receiver.
Yeah, I mean, Michael Thomas is, if you see a run on running backs, and Michael Thomas is sitting there at 9, then sure.
I think Michael Thomas would be gone by 9.
You think so?
Probably the number 1 receiver, right?
Who do you consider the second best running back on your board?
Second best?
Yeah.
Saquon?
No, wide receiver, sorry.
Oh, wide receiver. Probably DeAndre Hopkins.
Okay, so, I mean, you're looking at him, Julio's in that conversation, and then
Devontae Adams,
right? So it's just that becomes a preference thing at that point. But 9, I'd say one of those running backs or whatever, if you prefer one of those wide receivers, like that.
So,
that seems like obvious choice.
I think in a weird way, even though he's gotten a lot of talk, DeAndre Hopkins is underrated at this point. If you're looking at Michael Thomas being up there at number 1, because obviously he's an awesome receiver, and then if you go in PPR and everything like that, but the way that everyone's expecting to have a breakout season this year, which every single person listen to is like, oh, Kyler Murray's going to have a breakout season this year. His best receiver is going to be obviously DeAndre Hopkins, and the offense that Cliff Kingsbury runs is very pass heavy. So if you're looking at him as like, I have here the 7th ranked receiver, he's behind Chris Godwin, Kenny Golladay, he's right around Mike Evans.
Marty, there's a reason he's behind, and it has to do with in Houston there was no running game, and there was when Wolf Fuller was injured half of every season. There was no real decent second wide receiver either. They were force feeding him the ball, and the argument for DeAndre getting even a little regression is because there are more weapons, in fact, in Arizona by far than there was with the Texans, and you can't even argue that.
Right. I mean, we've had an entire podcast about Will Fuller on here before.
Right, but specific to that, they force fed him the ball. Like, it's not unrealistic for him to get 140, targets as opposed to 170 or 180. I don't think that's unrealistic.
Well, my argument is, why is he down at 7? Why can he not be? Why can't he be the best receiver in football this year?
He could be, but I think there is a reasonable argument to be made, and why some people, I wouldn't have him below Chris Godwin like that. We can have a whole conversation about the regression of Tampa. Like, people look at the Tom Brady situation. I don't want to just jump right into that, but like the Chris Godwin's a really good wide receiver, but I would put a lot of money on the fact that Mike Evans and Chris Godwin won't finish with the same numbers they did last year.
Okay, so I kind of want to talk about that as well. So they have Godwin here as 5th and Evans as 8th. The whole Tampa Bay situation, if you guys had to pick one of those guys, Evans or Godwin, is it going to be better or worse? Because I could argue that they would have had better stats than Jameis, because all they did was chuck it around the entire time.
Yeah, I think they're going to go down in fantasy production.
Yeah,
there's no way
Tom Brady. Better team, but fantasy-wise,
Yeah.
they're not going to be as good. And then you have Gronk, who is Brady's boy. Like, so, and they're going to run the ball a little bit more. There's all sorts of different scenarios that play into the fact that those two won't get the stats that they did last year, which were really, really good.
I think also talking to Chase, who's a Dolphins fan, and Jeff, who's a Cowboys fan, there's no chance that any of us are going to get Gronk in our drafts because he's going to go way too high, right?
He's going to go higher than I am willing to take him, as are the
Everybody has a Patriots fan in the league, and he's going to go way too high. The same as Tom Brady.
Yeah, I'm not going to take him.
Yeah.
Well, I knew Chase wouldn't just out of principle of being a Dolphins fan.
And there's a lot of other better tight ends, I think.
There are players I look at.
He's not even a top 5 tight end, is he?
Yeah, no. For me, there's players I look at who I may like, but I will look at a situation and go, somebody is going to like them higher than I'm willing to take them. So often those players like just come off my board, and those two are a perfect example of it. They really aren't on my board or on my radar because somebody is going to take them higher than I'm willing to take them.
Yeah. At best, he's the 5th tight end.
To that point, I mean, I don't know how you guys are as far as the draft goes. And it helps that my team sucks, but I'm not one to take somebody higher than they're supposed to be just because that's my team.
Oh no!
So, like, I'm predicting. College is different than pros, so I'm kind of predicting that Jeff is going to reach for Cam Akers this year in our draft, and I would guess that Chase is probably going to reach for Tua this year. You're definitely drafting Tua, right?
Honestly, I can't remember the last time I had a Dolphins player on my fantasy team.
Well, because they all suck.
Yeah, like, I wouldn't take anybody.
I famously, in our draft last year, Chase, I famously was drunk and I drafted Devontae Parker like 4 times.
It was twice.
That's probably the only guy I would take is Parker. But
Right.
I wouldn't reach for him.
You're not drafting Tua?
Not this year. It's not a keeper league.
I mean, yeah, it's not a keeper league, true.
And he's not even going to be the starter.
But I bet you Jeff is going to wind up with Cam Akers this year. I can almost guarantee it.
No, I won't.
How many games do you think Tua is going to start?
At least 6.
6?
I think there's a possibility they redshirt him.
Yeah, I wouldn't play him at all.
If I was the Dolphins, I wouldn't play him at all.
I'm with you. I wouldn't play him at all.
It all depends on how Fitzpatrick does.
I mean, he's startable. I mean, he's one of the better. I mean, I'm going to say backups, but obviously he's starting. But he's pretty consistent. I mean, he's not going to lose you the game, but he's not going to win you the game.
Yeah.
And nobody's drafting him in fantasy. But I was just curious as far as, I mean, I know there was times, Chase, you probably drafted Tim Tebow in drafts, and Jeff is a big Florida State fan, so
Tebow.